Hello and welcome. So in this lecture video, I'm going to cover the make or buy decision and also special orders. So the make or buy decision is basically an outsourcing decision. And I think a lot of you will probably deal with outsourcing decisions in your career. The outsourcing decision, outsourcing started with a lot of blue collar jobs where they would outsource textile manufacturing to lower cost industries. But it has moved into more white-collar jobs as well, and so you see some outsourcing now with a lot of information technology, where IT can be done in different countries, other countries outside the United States, such as India and China, for example, where labor costs can be much lower. So when we talk about the decision from a strategy position for a company to outsource, companies often like to outsource services or products or divisions that can be done cheaper by another company and also for which that's just not what they do. So for example, if a company had an internal IT division, they may want to think about outsourcing that, the information technology, maybe the IT help desk or the development of new software, to another company because maybe that's just not what that company does, and another company can do it cheaper. So cost is a big factor with outsourcing, and then also specialized expertise is another big factor revolving around outsourcing. So when we talk about from an accounting standpoint in terms of should we make or buy, which is an outsourcing decision, what we're focused on is only the cost. And so basically what we're assuming is that the revenues in either whether we make it or whether we buy it, the revenues stay the same. So total sales volume stays the same, and so does our sale price. It also stays the same. Is that always true? Maybe, maybe not, but that's what the assumption is that we're making in this chapter, okay? And I'll comment more on that as we finish the problem. So our company, let's take a look at our example. Our company is presently making part 4A, which is used in one of its products. The unit cost is as follows. We have our direct materials of $9. We have our direct labor of $5, variable overhead of $1, depreciation of special equipment, and that does have an asterisk, and that's $3, and this is our unit cost. $9 unit, $5 unit, $1 unit, okay? And then $3 a unit. Then we look over here, and we have our supervisor's salary. We can put that also on a unit basis of $2 a unit. And then general factory overhead, 2 asterisks, that's $10 a unit. So you look over here, the depreciation is one that had the 1 asterisk. So this is not going to be relevant. Why is this not going to be relevant? Because it has no resale value, okay? It has no resale value. So if we think about kind of like what we did with the dropping a product line decision, what we can do first is we can go through and we can categorize these unit costs. It's going to be relevant or irrelevant. So if we make the product, we will have direct materials cost. If we buy it, we don't have to pay for it. We don't have direct materials cost because we're not going to make it. Okay, we're going to buy it from somewhere else. So that's going to be relevant. So again, when we're talking about a relevant cost, we're talking about one that differs between two alternatives. Direct labor of $5. If we make it, we have to pay for the direct labor. If we buy it, we don't have to pay for the direct labor. Variable overhead. If we make it, we're going to have $1 a unit of variable overhead. If we buy it, we don't have this. So that's relevant. Depreciation of the special equipment. We were told on the next page that it has no resale value. So therefore, we're going to incur this regardless of whether we make it or whether we buy it. So that's going to be irrelevant. Okay? We come over here to the supervisor's salary, and what we're going to say is that if we make it, we have to pay the supervisor. But if we buy it, we don't have to pay the supervisor. Okay, so that's going to make it relevant. And then finally, we have our general factory overhead. That has 2 asterisks. That's a common allocated cost. Okay, so what we're saying is similar to that example that we talked about with the library, which was in our dropping a product line, that this common allocated cost will get shifted to other product lines. And so if that's the case, at the company level, it would stay the same. It doesn't go away. So that means it's also going to stay with us. It just gets shifted to another product. It's irrelevant. Okay? So now what we can do is we can also continue on right over here, and it says our costs above are based upon 20,000 parts produced each year, and outside suppliers offered to provide the 20,000 parts for only $25 a part. Here's the thing, right? That's our unit cost, which is $30. So on the surface, this looks like a really good deal because it looks like, hey, we're paying $30 a unit. The supplier said, we're going to sell it to you for $25. But there are some costs here. The trick is that there are some costs here that will continue regardless of whether or not we make it or whether we buy it. So the question becomes, should we make it or should we buy it? Should we accept this offer or should we still make it in-house? We need to compare the prices for making and buying the 20,000 units because remember, with our make or buy decision, we're assuming that the revenues will be the same whether we make it or buy it, and so it just simply becomes a decision based upon cost, which one's the lower cost. So in terms of the outside purchase price, remember we're looking at 20,000 parts at $25 a part. You multiply 20,000 times the 25, and then that gives us the total purchase price. I'm going to show this in terms of total, not just units. That would be if we buy it. Obviously, it's 0 if we make it. We have our direct materials cost. If you looked on the prior page, remember it was $9 a unit times the 20,000 parts, because that's how many we'd have to make. 180,000. 20,000 times the 9. Look on the prior page, it says our labor cost per unit is $5 times the 20,000 parts that we either have to make or buy. That's what we're deciding. Either make or buy these 20,000 parts. That gives us the 100,000. Our variable overhead was $1 times the 20,000. And then we also have depreciation of specialty equipment. Now I'm just going to put NA here. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because it would be the same in either situation. So I'm just going to leave it out because it's the same here as it is here. Remember, depreciation of special equipment was $3 a unit, which means it would be $60,000 here if we make it, but it'd also be $60,000 if we buy it because we can't get rid of the equipment. It just sits. So we can't, or maybe we can use it on a different product line, but the fact is we're going to incur that depreciation regardless of whether we make it or whether we buy it. We also have the supervisor's salary, which was given to us at $2 a unit times the 20,000. And what we're saying is that if we make it, we have that supervisor, but if we buy it, we're going to have to lay off the supervisor. Okay? And I'm not kidding that when I worked, I think I may have said this in some other lecture videos, that when I worked in industry, one of the terms that was used on a PowerPoint presentation was you weren't fired, you weren't laid off, you were deselected. I'm not kidding. We have our general factory overhead, $10 per unit. But the thing is, right, is that general factory overhead, as we were saying, is an allocated common cost. It will stay here. It will remain if we make it. But we will also incur it if we buy it. So I'm just writing not applicable because it would be the same in either situation. Remember, it's $10 a unit times the 20, so it'd be 200,000 here. It would be 200,000 here. So I'm just not even going to show it. Okay? Because it would be the same in either situation. Now what I can do is add up my total cost for making, add up my total cost for buying, and what I have here is my 340. I have my 500. What should we do? We should make it because lower cost. Make because the cost is lower. Now we can look on the next page, and we have a slightly different scenario here. Our Essex company now has the opportunity to make another product with the equipment and space used to make part 4A. Okay, this new product, let's call this product part 4B. If we make part 4B, right, we get this $200,000 in profit. But if we make part 4A, we can't make part 4B, and so we lose out, or we forego this $200,000 in profit. So when we look down here and we say, well, what does this $200,000 represent? That's an opportunity cost. That's an opportunity cost of making part 4A. Okay? It's an opportunity cost of making part 4A. So now what we can do is we can redo our analysis considering this opportunity cost. And I'm going to come up here and do it. I have my make, and then I have my buy. And whenever you have a problem like this, it's always really useful to make a table. And I'll say purchase cost. And remember, that was $500,000. And then what we had was cost to make. Remember, we looked on the prior page, and that was $340,000. We did that on the prior page, and now what we have is opportunity cost, though. Opportunity cost of making, which we said down here is that $200,000, because that's the profit that we would forego if we make it, because we can't make part 4B. That gives us the profit of $200,000. So now what we can see is the cost to buy it is $500. The cost to make it is $540. What should we do now? Well, now we should buy it. Buy part 4A and then make part 4B using that equipment and space. That should be our strategy. Buy part 4A and then use the equipment and space that we would normally use for part 4A to make part 4B, which gives us this product margin of $200,000. Now let me just quickly comment on this idea that our revenues would stay the same between make or buy, and that's just not pertinent to the test. The test said on the test questions and any homework questions, we're saying revenues don't matter, okay, that they're the same in either scenario. But in the real world, that may not be the case, because if you start to outsource, right, if you outsource part 4A to another company and you laid off the supervisor and you fired the assembly line workers, right, your company could be on the front page of the local newspaper or the Wall Street Journal for all these layoffs. That could hurt the local economy, and then people may say, I don't want to shop at your company anymore. So you could have reputation effects that then could hurt sales, okay? It could also cause employee morale issues. So similar to some of the arguments that I talked about with our dropping a product line, there are a lot of qualitative considerations that go into make or buy decisions, similar to dropping a product line. And the example that I gave was dropping a major. You can't just drop a major only based upon financial considerations. There's a lot of considerations to take into account. Same thing here. To assume that revenues will always be the same, maybe, maybe not. In this case of our class, that's what we assume. In the real world, though, it's a much richer context, and that may not always be the case. Okay, so really quickly, just kind of introducing our special orders, and then in the next video, I'll go through and do the problem. So the decision to accept any additional business would be based on incremental costs and incremental revenues. So similar to what we've talked about before, when we talk about accepting a special order, what we're saying is that a company comes to us and they say, we need you to make this new part for us, and we need you to make this new product for us, and they typically may not pay full price, and we have to decide whether or not we have the capacity to build it and whether or not it makes financial sense to do that. And we'll tackle that in the next lecture video. Thanks.